my refined vision for a decentralized free trade Americas. I envision a transformative economic and governance model for the Americas, encompassing Canada, the United States, Mexico, and South America, that harnesses free trade, labor mobility, and decentralized governance to foster prosperity. Drawing on the wisdom of economists like Adam Smith, Milton Friedman, Friedrich Hayek, Ray Dalio, Peter Schiff, Alfred Marshall, Jeffrey Sachs, Robert Kiyosaki, Richard Wolff, and Jim Rickards, I've refined my original proposal, retaining its strongest elements and discarding those that risk instability or inequity. My finalized system promotes economic efficiency, local autonomy, and equitable growth, with clear mechanisms to ensure resilience and fairness. The heart of my vision is a free trade zone across the Americas, eliminating tariffs and trade barriers. Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations underscores the power of free trade to drive efficiency through comparative advantage by allowing Canada to leverage its natural resources, Mexico its manufacturing, and South American nations their agricultural strengths. Goods become cheaper, benefiting consumers and spurring innovation. Alfred Marshall's supply and demand principles reinforce this. A larger market optimizes resource allocation, reducing costs and boosting productivity. The success of agreements like the USMCA proves regional integration's potential. I retain this element as it aligns with market driven prosperity and creates a dynamic economic ecosystem. Open labor mobility for non criminals is another core component, refined for practicality. Milton Friedman's capitalism and freedom champions economic freedom and allowing workers to move where jobs are, whether to tech hubs in Canada or agricultural regions in Brazil, enhances productivity and reduces unemployment. However, Friedman's warnings about strained public services prompt me to add a regional adjustment fund, financed by trade surplus revenues, to support infrastructure and services in areas receiving high migration. This ensures host regions, like U.S. border states or urban Canada, aren't overwhelmed, balancing economic freedom with social stability. I also propose a digital labor registry to track migration flows transparently, preventing exploitation and ensuring fair wage competition. Decentralized governance remains a cornerstone, inspired by Friedrich Hayek's The Road to Serfdom. Hayek's concept of spontaneous order, where local knowledge drives better outcomes than centralized control, guides my emphasis on local autonomy. Cities and nations tailor policies to their unique needs, fostering innovation and accountability. For example, Chile could prioritize mining regulations, while Toronto focuses on tech incentives. I discard the vague notion of a weaker federal system, replacing it with a streamlined regional council. This council, with representatives from each nation, coordinates trade standards, migration protocols, and dispute resolution, ensuring cohesion without undermining local sovereignty. Hayek would approve of this minimal yet effective framework, which preserves decentralized decision making while fostering regional unity. Security is critical for a trade dependent region, so I retain the International Task Force for Cross Border Crimes and the Merchant Marine and Coast Guard to protect trade routes. Milton Friedman and Adam Smith's preference for limited government supports a lean task force focused on issues like drug trafficking or human smuggling, with jurisdiction remaining local to respect decentralization. Jim Rickards' Currency Wars emphasizes economic security, so I strengthen the merchant marine's role to include cybersecurity for digital trade platforms, addressing modern threats like data breaches. These forces ensure safe, reliable trade vital for a region spanning diverse geographies. I discard the overly simplistic idea of a strengthened money supply, as it lacks clarity and invites instability. Peter Schiff's advocacy for sound money warns against fiat currency volatility in a region with diverse economies. Instead, I propose a regional trade clearinghouse to stabilize exchange rates for cross border transactions using a weighted basket of currencies, e.g., US dollar, Canadian dollar, Mexican peso, Brazilian real. This draws on Ray Dalio's principles, which stress managing systemic risks. The clearinghouse facilitates smooth trade without forcing a single currency, preserving national monetary autonomy while reducing volatility, a pragmatic compromise Schiff and Dalio would likely endorse. Jeffrey Sachs, The End of Poverty highlights the risk of inequality in a trade zone spanning developed and developing nations. To prevent wealthier countries like the US and Canada from dominating, I incorporate a regional development fund financed voluntarily by wealthier nations and trade revenues. This fund supports education, healthcare, and infrastructure in poorer regions, like Bolivia or Paraguay, with local governments controlling allocations to align with decentralization. Sachs would approve of this focus on equitable growth, ensuring the trade zone lifts all nations without centralized overreach. Richard Wolff's Democracy at Work critiques capitalism's tendency to favor corporations over workers. While I reject his Marxist overhaul, I adopt regional labor standards to prevent wage suppression and ensure safe working conditions enforced locally to maintain autonomy. This addresses Wolff's concern that open labor mobility could exploit workers in poorer nations, ensuring fairness across the trade zone. For example, minimum safety standards for factories in Mexico would align with those in the US, leveling the playing field. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad inspires a regional financial education initiative delivered locally to empower workers in a dynamic economy. Free trade and labor mobility create opportunities, but without financial literacy, individuals risk poor decisions or exploitation. By teaching budgeting, investing, and entrepreneurship, this initiative ensures workers thrive, aligning with Kiyosaki's emphasis on personal empowerment. Ray Dalio's systemic approach and principles prompts me to stress test my model. Economic shocks, currency crises, migration surges, or trade disputes could destabilize the system. The Regional Council, using data-driven insights, would monitor risks and coordinate responses, such as adjusting the development fund during downturns. This proactive approach ensures resilience, as Dalio advocates. Jim Rickard's warnings about geopolitical risks further suggest external threats, like currency manipulation by non-member nations. I propose trade agreements with key partners to mitigate such risks, ensuring the Americas remain competitive. Implementation would begin with a treaty establishing the Free Trade Zone, Labor Mobility Framework, and Regional Council. The Development Fund and Clearinghouse would launch within 2 years with pilot programs for labor standards and financial education. Regular audits by the Council ensure transparency and accountability, addressing Dalio's call for meritocratic governance. Challenges remain: coordinating diverse legal systems, managing migration perceptions, and ensuring equitable fund distribution, but these are surmountable through transparent, localized mechanisms. My finalized vision creates a vibrant Americas where trade flows freely, workers move where needed, and local communities govern themselves. It leverages Smith and Friedman's market efficiency, Hayek's decentralization, Sachs and Wolff's equity focus, Kiyosaki's empowerment, and Dalio and Rickard's risk management. This system fosters prosperity, fairness, and resilience, uniting the Americas in a shared economic future.